Welcome to Women of the Wise Path, a place for fostering open discussions about womanhood in our new world paradigm. We are a collective of holistic practitioners, coaches, and leaders devoted to supporting women as we navigate the shifting landscape of our times. Through conversations on health, culture, spirituality, motherhood, partnership, business, and transformation, we intend to spark connections, bridge generations, and share wisdom about what it means to support women of today. Welcome to Women of the Wise Path. Hello, everyone. I am 𝗧𝗢𝗵𝗵, and I have the pleasure to be here with 𝗧𝗢𝗂 as we are going to explore the topic Women Leadership in Today's World. As you know, I am deeply interested in how, in these challenging times and in the rise of the new paradigm, and by new paradigm, we all agree it's shifting from a dualistic view to oneness. So how we are called to rethink many concepts we once took for granted. So this shift invites us to question who we truly are, and that's something we can't escape. So welcome, Isabelle.
Hello, Viviane.
So I'm going to give a brief description of your profile. And correct me. You are a healing artist, wellness practitioner, and educator. You source from your multidisciplinary training and life practice in the fields of yoga, energy healing, sacred sound, somatics, and clinical hypnosis to weave individual and group experiences for well-being, personal development, and creativity in the face of change. Your approach focuses on felt sense dynamics, addressing memories, traumas, perceptions, and beliefs for the purpose of reframing and integrating the natural seasons and life cycles woven in the complexity of the human experience. I love it.
Yes.
I love it. Wonderful, wonderful. So we know a bit each other because I've interviewed you in other circumstances, and we both agree that this new paradigm, call it whatever you want, whatever the euphemism people use, new consciousness, new paradigm, whatever, there is something happening. And this something creates a sort of tension and balance. We don't know how to come out of these polarity things in society. So that's what you are going to address with the concept of leadership. So let's dive in the subject. Isabelle.
Yes.
I let you share your thoughts on the subject. So the thing is, for me, the three angles of this beautiful triangle: women, leadership, and new consciousness or new paradigm.
Yeah.
It's a powerful triangle that shakes up a bit society on many levels. So I'll let you express what's your concept of leadership.
Yeah. I don't know if it's my concept, because I don't own anything and I don't pretend to own anything, nor do I want to own any idea or concept. But I think I'm always curious in exploring new reflections. And it's interesting because in my corporate career, at some point in my life, I remember having the opportunity to work with a great coach. And she herself had a great background in psychology and had been applying it to organization, whether large, small. And she coached, leaders. And I remember her, and what I love is that she was informed by an actual degree in psychology. And the reason I thought that was important, because I do believe that our leadership is very much shaped by who we are as individuals and how much we know ourselves and how much we know how things shape us, affects us, trigger us, right? When we don't know that, we can have a very unconscious leadership and not be clear or honest about our motivations. So I remember her giving me a bunch of tests just to have a starting point about kind of a psychological footprint. And at the end of the time that we had together, one day she said, the reason why you're not a CEO is not because you don't have the acumen, it's because your philosophy or approach to leadership doesn't fit the paradigm in which you are existing. And when I asked her to elaborate, she said something, and she said, if we think about leadership at least on this side of the world, and in the way it's being discussed a lot, she said it's kind of narrow, and it's very much a vertical structure that thinks about leadership from a top-down perspective. So there's a very strong link between leadership and hierarchy. And she said, after all these months we spent together, I can tell that for you, leadership is something that is a lot more circular and inclusive, right? And so when you asked me to come talk to you about this, I like sometimes to go back to the meaning of words, because we use words sometimes. And when we look at the definition of leadership, there's often this idea of guiding and this idea of achieving a goal. And what I'm interested in today, when I think about leadership, and especially because of the change and the challenges that we have to face, I'm interested in the idea of stewardship, which is more about responsible management of people and resources, right? And with a longer term vision, right? And so I think when we start thinking stewardship as opposed to leadership, there are certain things that are shifting. In leadership, and especially the way it's expressed today, there's often an element of self-realization through some kind of competitive value. I realize myself because I'm able to ascend, I'm able to achieve something that places me in a way in a relationship on a vertical ladder versus somebody else. And when we talk about stewardship, there is more that sense of I am here, but I can also disappear. And this should work without me. And I think that's very different. And I think that's more interesting also. I'm not interested necessarily to talk about leadership and how men do it versus how women do it. I think I'm more interested on how we are going to do it regardless of genders. And of course, when we talk about leadership, we have to talk about relationship to power and what does power mean.
I agree. I agree with that. But that's how can I say, the synonym, more or less. It depends how you look at it. What we call conscious leadership, in that sense. But as we talked about before, it's well, I am practicing Zen, but we always say the same thing. It's difficult to come out of the duality, of the dualistic thinking. So we are always caught in some tension there. The difference is, as you said, we use words to communicate concepts that mean something. Concepts evolve, but the thing is not to be attached to those concepts, because otherwise this is it. I define, this is what I want, this is what leader means, and blah, 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 blah. But I follow you, when you talk about stewardship. And there's one thing you said last time about stewardship. I really like it. It's about ethical rethinking nature. And you were saying that the women are more into stewardship than leadership.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to fall into stereotype, but I think by nature of the bodies in which we live, by nature of our place in the world, and by nature of how culture has defined our place through the ages, I think there is, I would say, a more natural tendency, or affinity, I should say, maybe not tendency, but an affinity with the idea of stewardship, in a sense that it's oftentimes rooted in something that is not about as much in immediate gratification. It's rooted in something that has a longer term vision. And it's also rooted in something that includes concerns not just for oneself, but also others. And oftentimes, and it can be community. And I think, we've all heard about the perspective of microcredits given to women. and how the banks will tell you, usually the women will get microcredits in underserved areas of the world. They will repay not only their loan, to the T, but oftentimes they are not just using their loan for their individual project. It often has an impact on uplifting an entire community, whatever size it is. So it's more in that sense that I think about stewardship versus leadership. It's not about an individual realization. It's about the manifestation of a potential that is inclusive of more people. And then I think when I think about power and leadership, again, if we think about how leadership is very much taught from a vertical standpoint, I think a lot of people confuse still today leadership and hierarchy. Okay. I'm the leader, so I'm at the top of the hierarchy, and therefore everything has to submit itself to my will or my idea. Not to say that we don't have leaders who don't make sure to have advisors, but there's always something driven very much from a narrower perspective at the top, or a narrower construct, maybe not perspective, but construct.
I see.
And I think I've been thinking a lot about power, recently, whether at an individual level or witnessing people in power or people in power that I admire or inspire me, whether past or present. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means. And oftentimes I feel like if you want to be a good leader, you need to understand, you really need to be clear about what do you think power is and what is your relationship to it. Because otherwise, the things that can happen, and we see that often in women, either you're not, or men, but in women, oftentimes there is, I'm not using the power I'm given, right? And then across, and that can be true also for men, I'm not using the power I'm given, or I'm going to misuse my power, or I'm going to abuse it. And I don't want to talk about malice or ill intention. I just want to say, in generally speaking, when we are not clear about what power is or means to us, we are more likely to either not use it when it's given to us, misuse it when we have access to it, or abuse it. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. In this day and age, and oftentimes it's not even about who we are, it's about the projection others put on us as a result of handing us the power, right? And if we are not really clear about our own relationship with it, that's when we can fall more easily in having others' projection, leading us to not use it, misuse it, or abuse it. I think that's more the things I've been pondering. And I'm not saying that I'm right. I've just been pondering this, both in terms of how I've seen, witnessed in my life, or, in history. There's a ton of examples of lack of using power, misuse, or abuse in today's day and age, and also even in communities of mindfulness. We've had many examples of communities that fall apart because of those three reasons.
Yep.
So I think it's a valuable inquiry to explore, especially in a time where there's obviously a lot of unpredictability and a very fragile equilibrium, close or at large. So I just want to say that for me, the new leadership, I believe, requires an inquiry, an individual and collective inquiry around what is power and why would one want it, or why would one not want it. And I will go a step further. I've been in a kind of a training recently, and there's a woman in my training that I really adore because I find that she has a lot of depth. And we were talking about power and what is real power. And she said something that stayed with me very much so, and I thought it was really beautiful. And she said, maybe power, real power, is having the ability to yield space. It's not about maybe taking space or occupying space, but yielding space to the one who does need to express their voice, does need to take space, right? So I think that's another layer here that maybe can help navigating that inquiry between leadership and stewardship.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, stewardship, I've heard it in other circumstances too. So maybe in the future we're going to use this term. But I wanted to add to that. You can see a need in many, how do you say, walk of society, like in business, for example, I've seen in many occasions this kind of way to hire people saying, we don't offer you a job, we are offer you a way to realize yourself at work. Okay, so we are still in a transition, so it's difficult, I would say, to come out, of this strong ideological way of talking in society. So language is very much a reflection of that. Language shapes our mind. And the first step, of course, we all agree, but now it's how to do it. But we all agree, like many spiritual leaders have said, or even Gandhi and the others, if it starts with yourself.
Yes.
So in that sense, yeah, power, because it's very close to leadership in a standard way of thinking. When we think of leadership, we think of power. And there's many other concepts, but the power is also what is at stake in today's reality. We see it everywhere. And those concepts have to be broken down, have to be transcended, they have to be, or perhaps erased from our language. I don't know. But what I mean is that what is fascinating to me is that society changing slowly, going through this new paradigm, it affects so much in our own way of dealing with things on an everyday basis that we don't realize. How we treat our family members or our friends, how we talk about things. I see this new fashion jargon from young people using words, concepts that I'm like, I would never use those concepts. Oh, my parents are Nazi. Why are they Nazi? Because they are strict and disciplined.
Yes, it's extreme language.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's interesting you're saying that, because even when you just said something, and I said to myself, when we talk about, and again, I mean, let's anchor that in the fact that we're obviously very well-resourced, privileged people with a lot of room to explore and have a strong sense of agency with our lives. But I think the idea also that you can only realize yourself through your main occupation, or the thing that gives you the ability to provide for your needs or your loved ones, takes away, I think, the fact that we are multidimensional beings, And then when I hear we are giving you an opportunity to realize yourself, like in the context of a job, let's say, I said to myself, are we really realizing ourselves only, through a job? It could be, but it doesn't have to be, right? It's like you can have a career that you love and at the same time have other spaces where you are able to express the aspect of yourself. And it's by having both or more that you can be then fully realized, because you are a multidimensional being. You can be a CEO and a great poet, and I don't think it's mutually exclusive, right? You can be a great athlete and be an incredible musician. So maybe being an athlete is your occupation, and the music is the opportunity to express this other side of your spirit and of your soul, right? Why would you give it away, or give it up, sorry. So I think self-realization, what does it even mean? I think people have to ask themselves that. And I think often, or at least for me, self-realization is being able to explore all the facets of one's inner world,
Yeah.
in a waking life.
Absolutely. Yeah. You mentioned multidisciplinary or multifaceted, and that's interesting. I've seen it more often. Maybe 2/3 of the time of people I interviewed, women have very often a multidisciplinary or multifaceted background, and that's a plus, because it nourishes whatever you do from your talents or your skills from other facets of your life. So that's
I agree, because, I think, I don't believe there's a difference between the person you are outside of your work and, let's say, the leader you have to be at work. I think you're one person, and who you are shapes who you're going to be at work. I think if we're really honest, we bring all our personal stories, all our personal baggage in relationship, in any space we occupy.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
we can see at work how that plays, at work, how that plays, the dynamics of power and of influence. And so I think you said something also that I think is worth exploring in leadership today is this idea of influence. Today, even when you have an amount of power, it seems that the world has decided that we need more voices to influence your own influence. Look at social media, it's all resting on the power of influence a lot. So there's leadership and stewardship of your own life. And then I think there's leadership and stewardship of the life you affect by nature of where you walk or stand in the world, whether it's a small space or a big space. And I think the question of what influences you is very equally important when you explore notions and ideas of leadership and or stewardships.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's also interesting about this new paradigm, meaning something is happening. We call it the awakening. Something is happening, at least in the Western countries. I can't speak for the East, but it's the point of even men are feeling this unbalance, in society. So the ideology is being broken down, the standard ideology, the way we're supposed to be, to think. That's even in the what we call the meta-narrative, like in the discourse of science, discourse of medicine, the discourse of... There is still this very old-fashioned way of looking at things. So to be able to quote unquote deconstruct those big meta narrative, to be able to find a way to express yourself differently. So that's also part of it. I always think of the movie. I saw the movie, I did not read the book, the trilogy, Hunger Games, and the ending. I love it. And the movie was okay, but I'm not talking about the plot, but at the ending, when they reverse the system in place, and the main character realizes that, oh my gosh, she's going to be as bad as the other one. So this is the point for me. And honestly, I don't want the polarity to continue, because if it continues, even from another angle, it's like a pendulum. We went too far left, now the pendulum is going right, but we have to stop thinking polarity. If we go to the extreme right, we're going to just reverse thing. So for me, it's the new consciousness, the new
Extreme right or
paradigm.
extreme left, any extreme.
Yeah,
Really.
exactly.
Doesn't matter.
The point
I,
is,
yeah,
yeah,
I think for
to
me, what
defold
you're
it.
talking about is um, it can be a same circus, different people. Okay, but
Exactly.
same circus. And I think it's more about the fact that all the realities we want to see changing, we've heard that, has to start within ourselves, right?
Exactly.
It's like if you do not like, well, today the topic is leadership. If you do not like your own leadership or the leadership of others, it's an invitation to say, what other type of leadership would I want to offer, right? But it has to start from inside. Over the years, my style of leadership has shifted quite a bit. Part of it is the fact that there are things you cannot understand and embody until you have the experience, the life experience, not just the work experience, but the life experience also that sends you the lesson that you need to be capable of being less either or. And I
Exactly.
think when you talk about polarity, for me, it's not so much about standing here or standing there. It's the ability of holding conflicting truths and understanding that there's never one absolute. There's conflicting truth, and both of them can be true in their own expression, right? And being able to hold them in right relationship, as opposed to say it has to be here or it has to be there. Because somehow I feel like the actual truth or the answer might lie in between. So it's less about either or, and it's more about both and, as one of my best friend always says, and I love that perspective she gave me during the pandemic. And I think it's true also in I don't even like this duality and polarity, because at the end of the day, the world is shaped around a lot of polarities and extremities. Day, night, sun, moon, cold, hot, short, long, small, big. It's a reality, right? Young, old. But it's not so much about that I'm interested in. It's more the fact that we are not willing to take into account the nuances that exist between polarities, and yet inform with so much more richness, and can open conversation, explorations, and infuse an opportunity for imagining new things and visioning new possibilities, and be a lot more creative.
Yeah, yeah. There's this way of talking about it's not both, it's not one or the other, it's just none of them. So that's opens to
As well.
creativity. Yeah, no, exact. Yeah. The other thing is we all agree with that. This is something we understand intellectually, but then having to do it, to become it, that's another step. So yeah, we have a saying that if you don't know who you are, you will end up where society wants you to be. If you know who you are, you're going to end up where you are supposed to be. So in that sense, I will go back to that idea at the beginning, which is reflect on yourself, or who are
Know
you?
yourself.
Know yourself.
Understand who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah, and take responsibility for your, it's interesting because I think it's knowing yourself has a lot to do also with taking responsibility for who you are. Take responsibility for your identity, for your persona, for your impact, whether you say or don't say something, do or don't do something, because I think oftentimes we're so obsessed with fitting in that we don't belong enough to ourselves. We don't fit with us. We are so eager to fit with others. It's like, but do you fit with you? That's an interesting question. And it's not about, also I think today there's so much impetus on what I call the pursuit of uniqueness and difference, which I think is okay. But if your whole goal in life is to always be unique and different, you do not spend enough time, I think, connecting with others and including them, in your life, in your understanding. It's not enough to have knowledge here. We also need to start having a revolution around heart understanding. And heart knowledge, I think, is not just, we live so much in with technology, so much in the age of information. We can access any information we want, okay? And if you have an internet connection today and a computer, you can educate yourself about pretty much anything. But it's not enough. I think we need also, and I think when it comes to leadership and the challenge, you also need an understanding. And an understanding requires an embodiment, something that you can actually feel, something that you can bring back to yourself, so you can bring it also to another, and not only hand them the knowledge or the guidance, but meet them at the level of their aspiration and how they need to be communicated to or reached. And that's a different layer, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Knowledge versus understanding. Understanding because of embodiment, of real experience. Embodiment because you can relate to another person, or you're going to make the effort.
Okay, yeah, I see. What would you, just a few directions or advice, or would you give to people as a way to embody this new leadership concept, or to open to a new leadership concept or stewardship?
Yeah, I think it's less about, so I think I mentioned a few things, which is explore the word leadership, its meaning, your understanding of it. What does it mean to you? Where are you a leader already in your life or in the world, or where would you want to be a leader? And then explore the idea of stewardship. research its meaning, where do you see example of it, and how different does it look from leadership? And then your relationship to those two constructs. And in your understanding today, as you see things, what do you think we need more of? And then explore your own understanding, relationship, and relatedness to the concept of power, right? The other thing I think is asking yourself your motivation. When you want to lead or guide, or what motivates you, right? Is it something that is about you taking a stand in the world, affirming your identity, realizing something that's dear to your heart? Or is it turned towards others and benefiting something that is outside of you, right? Because there's nothing wrong in either one, but I think it's important to understand that. And then the third piece about leadership for me is this idea of, can we get out of this vertical construct, which is narrow, and think wider, right? Because I think part of this awakening we're seeing, and we've been seeing for a while, even, like just an illustration of it for me is, for the longest time, I would read things and I would not find them necessarily in other countries I would travel. And then all of a sudden, I remember being in an airport and seeing all those authors that I was reading on the concept of neuroscience, astrophysics, mindfulness, translated in all those languages. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. There's been a universal awakening where this message is seeked by people from a lot of different places, and also sent to people in a lot of different places, right? So, but I think today, also in the idea of polarization, when you try to really listen to people, I have my opinions, obviously, and values and ideologies, and I am in connection with some people that are very different than me. We don't agree. But what's interesting, though, is that I've made the effort more on deep listening. And I think this is something we spoke about in the last time you interviewed me, the importance of deep listening, and not just for the purpose of responding, but for observing and expanding your awareness. Because if you can spend more time listening, not to say I'm going to respond to this, not to say I'm going to judge this, not to say I'm going to reject this, but just listening to feel the opposite opinion or position or proposition, you're going to be able to hear all the things that are not spoken and be able to feel the person underneath it and what are their aspirations. And you're going to realize there's more opportunities for bridging and connecting and collaborating than not. Yeah. It's just that you may not agree on the way to get there.
Exactly. Yeah, I really like it. Yeah. And the other thing is the survival mode. More and more people are on a survival mode, and that survival mode is dangerous because it makes you take decision or do things from a point of extreme. Exact. So I remember you mentioned a few things, like the first questions we should ask ourselves are, for example, do we really want to change? Do we really want to have peace? Do we really want to be healthy? What are we ready to give up? That I remember a Zen master saying, enlightenment is not about gaining anything. You don't practice to gain something, enlightenment, like you pick an apple from the tree. Enlightenment means the opposite, to lose all illusions about yourself, meaning the ego. So then what is left is your true nature, compassion, wisdom, and etc. But the survival mode is a dangerous thing. So please find ways to bring, some inner peace first.
Yeah, I think, and again, I want to anchor this in a message of some people are in survivals and they're the reason for it, and they don't have much to get out of that survival today. Let's be very honest with ourselves. This is a profound luxury for you and I to sit here and having this conversation. And for some people, it may come across as an indulgence on the basis of the access they have or how much room they have to not be in a survival mode. And I think for me, it's always important to say that.
I agree. I agree.
I do believe that survival mode, there's a lot of pressures. Life pressures are increasing, they're there, they're real. And it's so funny because for me, in the practice of a lot of things that have interested me, and we talked about that the last time we talked about neuroplasticity. The reason why I love all those practices like yoga or exploration with sound or exploration with energy and definitely hypnosis is because the more simplicity you bring into your life, the more it's going to create a level of relaxation into your life that can be conducive to your inner peace, first of all. And most importantly, the ability to have creativity. A friend of mine took me to a salon organized by a pretty renowned hypnotherapist here in New York. And he said something about the fact that there's a difference between, or I think it's Einstein that said something about how imagination is not a luxury, you know. I'm going to look for it because I have it right here. It's funny because I read it last night again. I don't know why. So I guess it meant that we were supposed to talk about it. But he talked about the difference between all the things we've been talking about, which is really imagination, creativity, possibility, right? And so Albert Einstein would say imagination is more important than knowledge, okay? Imagination is only available when you can relax and receive, which makes it different than visualization. And thinking, visualizing is an active process, so it's a very young energy, but receiving is a receptive process. The work of imagination is completely yin. So it does require a receptive attitude. So when we talk about leadership or stewardship, it doesn't matter. We can only be the best at it when we are in states of awareness that are more relaxed and less reactive, right? So that's what you talk about survival. When we are in survival, we are only reacting to things. When we are not in survival, we can have the opportunity to be receptive and act from a very different place, right?
Exactly.
Think and act from a different place. So I do think it's important, those considerations in leadership, especially because of the nature of the pressures, multiple pressures, and the nature of the pace at which we're living today.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And the other thing about women, I would say, about women or men, but since we are talking about women leadership, it's to acknowledge, to recognize the differences between us all. You know, it's
Yes.
not because we are women that means we all have the same needs, desire, or
Pace,
pace.
rhythm.
Exactly. It's very important to take that into account, you know.
And I think, when we talk about leadership and women in that sense, by nature of how our bodies are ruled by a very different set of hormones and cycles, right? Obviously, our way of moving and operating and feeling and percepting is different as well. And I think there is this idea that we never take into consideration, this idea of rhythm, cycle, first of all. I'm not talking about menstrual cycle, but cycle, the fact that everything exists through some form of cycle. And also rhythm, our own inner rhythm versus the rhythm at which we're being asked to exist. And that's a very different thing. So when you ask me what are the things you can ask people, as somebody who's I've been exploring a lot the field of somatics more, in the last 5 years, I think there's this idea of, do you know your rhythm? Because if you don't know your rhythm, you can be at odds with certain cycles and other rhythm. And when you talk about pressure, right, it's not just the pressure of the world, it's also the pressure we put on ourselves. So when I say, do we really want to change? I ask that question. I think genuinely we want change. Oftentimes we're not able to manifest change because we don't know what to replace it with. and we don't know what to replace it with. So that implies two things. There's a familiarity to what you know, even if you don't like it, even if it's chaotic, you can navigate it. It's very familiar. You can navigate it, okay? And in order to create something else, we're having an understanding now that all habituation is very much related to the nervous system. So if you want to create new habits, they also have to be created in the nervous system, and that requires repetition, right? But you can only repeat something. It's not enough to imagine. You know, as hypnotists, what we do is that we put you in a relaxed state, and we just craft a different story that you tell yourself. I don't want to narrow the field of hypnosis, but if I had to summarize, is that we're not really putting you in a trance. We're getting you out of the trance that you've put yourself with the stories you tell yourself, whether consciously and mostly subconsciously. So in order to change the stories, what do? We put you in a state of relaxation, because in that yin receptive state, we can start implanting new seeds. But it's not enough to put the seeds. You have to water it day after day after day after day. So it's like, what is the one habit towards that new seed you're going to practice every single day? So eventually it becomes a part of you.
Yep.
That's also another way we can start saying, okay, we can talk about change and pressure and say, okay, there's pressure out there. Where do I put pressure on myself? And how do I deactivate those unnecessary pressure I create for myself? It's not just about others. It's all the ways. Oftentimes we don't look at all the ways we create those more toxic paradigms, you know, within ourselves, within our existence and our daily lives.
Yeah, I agree. No, I agree. And also, it's not to feel guilty about that. It's not that people should feel, oh, it's because of the way I thought of this. No, it's not about guilt. It's about making you aware of that. So awareness. You can change.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a last quote I wanted to read because it reminded me our discussion about neuroplasticity. It's a psychiatrist who wrote something interesting. I don't remember his name, forgive me. And he said, neuroplasticity becomes very important. We all know that the subconscious makes up to 90%, or some say even more, of our habits. Mm-hmm. If we don't rewire our subconscious, we end up sabotaging ourselves and have to relearn constantly the same thing, like positive thinking, to make a change become a real transformation. So he said that goes also for fear, anxiety, emotional extreme. They are from the ancient mechanism of the brain to protect us. Mm-hmm. Any new paradigm creates some resistance at first, but with what's happening in today's reality, we should not let the ancient brain's pattern control us, which is fear, anxiety, and blah, blah. So let's end with that. What's your thought on that? That the fear, anxiety are natural and ancient reaction to the world, or the aggressivity, the danger?
Yes and no. I think there's a beauty. There's a beauty also in fear and anxiety. You know, at the end of the day, whatever protective mechanism, you know, and that's what the field of neuroplasticity talks about. It says that whatever we do or the habits we have, they always have a very good intention. You know, if you don't have the capacity to deal with something, your fear and anxiety may protect you from going beyond your capacity and collapsing. So I don't have a problem with someone who's afraid or someone who's anxious. What I would want to understand is what is the source of the fear and what could be something that can pacify it so the fear doesn't be overcoming. Exactly. You know, overcoming your attitude and behaviors constantly. You don't want to be just informed by fear. Healthy fear is very important. The limbing brain is very intelligent. You need it. If you cross the street when a car is coming, you know, what's the wisdom of having a frontal cortex? You need also a limbing brain. You know what I mean? So I don't really like those. And also I find that they're very intellectual in the sense that they take away from the fact that we also live in bodies. And that a lot of our memories, a lot of our experiences are anchored and recorded in the body through the form of sensation. But a lot of time, those sensations are not, we're not aware of them. And there's not a disconnect between our emotions, sensations, and our thoughts. So it's more about how do we reconcile, those communications, so to understand what are they coming from, and are they overpowering the wisdom of the other two, or are they collaborating?
I see. Yeah. Yeah, well said. Yeah. So, Isabelle, we are reaching the limit of our time. We can talk for hours, but so thank you. Thank you so much for your
You're so
time with
welcome.
us,
Thank you.
and sharing your perspective and wisdom on women leadership. I think it's very important. I really like the way you made the concept explode a little bit. So I hope that our discussion inspired listeners to explore more for their own inner leadership stewardship. And that was the point of our discussion, to open it. Yeah.
Yes.
So any special thing you want to add, or how people can reach you? They can see your bio and link in the description below the episode. But just to end the discussion, do you have any
No,
way
I
they can
think
reach you?
leadership is important. At the end of the day, I'm not talking about being a leader. Like when people think leader, they think, oh, you're the boss of something. But I think leadership has to be infused in everything you do, and how you conduct your life. So I think what's important, the question of leadership for me, especially as it relates to women, requires also an exploration about embodiment, right? What we need is more embodied leaders, not just thinking leaders, talking leaders, but embodied leaders, and I think
I
we
love
have
that.
a big opportunity to express that, live it, embody it, and inspire others through it.
Wonderful. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. So
Thank you,
thank
Vivian.
you all for being with us today. And until next time, have a clear and conscious journey. Thank you for joining us today for Women of the Wise Path. Continue the journey with more conversation, events, and resources at the address below. We'd love to hear from you and what you would like to talk about. Together, we're shaping a future rooted in wisdom, collaboration, and the infinite power of the feminine spirit. Until next time, may we walk all together the wise path, guided from within.